content and may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is strongly advised.
True North True Crime is produced on the territories of the Coast Salish people.
Just how loving of a kid he is. He was such a loving and giving child. And he never grew out of that. He was still like that when he was older.
He would have given his shirt off his back for anybody.
Especially for a friend.
Yeah, he loved his friends. Yeah, he was a special boy.
I think that's why it's hard to believe that friends did this to him.
Because he was such a wonderful person. Yeah, very caring and loving.
On the evening of December 16th, 2015, the sounds of violence could be heard coming from the middle unit of a triplex located in Moncton, New Brunswick. A neighbor reported hearing what she thought sounded like a beating, followed by a male voice yelling, "You stole from us. You ratted to the police." This was followed by the sounds of somebody being beaten, while a panicked voice pleaded, "No, I love you guys." Things fell silent around 10:30 p.m., but then the violence intensified. The neighbor describes what she heard as extremely loud and aggressive, and hearing the victim cry out in pain and saying stop. In the early morning hours of December 17th, 2015, this neighbor was awoken by firefighters bursting through her front door, telling her that the unit next door was on fire and that she needed to be evacuated. But beyond the flames was a reality darker than anyone had expected. It was only the start of a chilling story of betrayal and murder. In this episode, we are uncovering the horrific murder of 18-year-old Baylee Wylie, and you are listening to True North True Crime.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to True North True Crime. Whether this is your first time listening or you've been with us for a long time, welcome and thank you for hitting the play button. If you'd like more True North True Crime, make sure you subscribe to TNTC Plus on Apple Podcasts or over on Patreon. You'll get early access to regular feed episodes, exclusive TNTC Plus episodes, as well as completely ad-free listening. We encourage all of our listeners who have case suggestions for us to send us an email at truenorthtruecrime@gmail.com. Please note we do prioritize cases that come to us directly from family members or close contacts of a case, but anyone who has a suggestion is more than welcome to drop us a line. All right, so for today's episode, we spoke to the victim's family members, including Baylee Wylie's mother, Amanda, as well as his aunt, Angie. We'd like to thank them both for sitting down with us to help us as well as our audience get to know Baylee and to be able to hear directly from the people who were and continue to be the most impacted by the crime that was committed. We put this episode together with the help of family members, court documents, publicly available news articles, as well as archived news articles. Additional content warnings for this episode include drug use, sex work, torture, kidnapping, and a violent homicide. Today's case takes place in Moncton, New Brunswick. Moncton is New Brunswick's most populated city and has been dubbed the hub city due to its central location within the maritime provinces. With a population of 79,470 people as of the 2021 census and a metropolitan population of 171,608 in 2022, Moncton experienced rapid growth, making it the fastest growing metro area in Canada that year. Initially settled in 1733 and officially founded in 1766, Moncton's economy faced challenges with the collapse of the shipbuilding industry in the 1860s and the closure of the railway shops in the 1980s. However, it rebounded each time, earning the motto Resurgo, or I Rise Again. Today, Moncton's economy is stable and diversified with strengths in transportation, distribution, retail, education, healthcare, finance, IT, and insurance. When it comes to crime, Moncton is a relatively safe city. Its total crime rate is 23% below the national average. That being said, according to the RCMP stats, crime is on the rise in Moncton as of 2024, with mental health calls, assaults, and break-and-enters being the most common occurrences for law enforcement response. Just a couple of months ago in February 2024, a town hall was held in Moncton in response to the increased crime in their city. According to a CTV Atlantic article, people seem to be complaining about crime going on in their own backyards, literally, with people walking through onto their property and engaging in theft and breaking and entering. One mother said her children were too afraid to play outside with the rise of unknown people walking through their yards both day and night. So now that we've got a bit of an overview about the city today's case takes place in, let's get to know Baylee Wylie.
So Baylee Wylie was born on April 6, 1997 at Moncton Hospital. He went to Riverview Middle School and then Riverview Secondary School. Baylee was known as a warm-hearted individual, known for his kindness, generosity, and caring nature. He had an engaging smile, which was contagious and had the power to light up a room. To his family and friends, Baylee's sense of humor, his laughter, and his approachable demeanor were always evident. He enjoyed staying connected with others through social media, regularly posting photos, statuses, and texting his friends with his cell phone that was always within arm's reach. It was rare to see him leave his parents or grandparents without making sure that they knew that he loved them. He often walked out the front door by saying, "I love you." We asked his mother Amanda and his aunt Angie to tell us about Baylee's early life.
Basically, I met my ex-husband when Baylee was probably
Just under one.
just under one.
Yeah.
I had just had him, and we were living in Moncton because my father was in the service. My ex-husband got in the service, and we moved to Gagetown. And we lived in Gagetown until Baylee was probably 8 when I separated and I moved back home here to Moncton.
Yeah, he was a great kid. He loved people. And so he was always wanted to be around people, hanging out with people. He was very social. He would talk to anybody. And he was always a happy child.
Very happy.
His favorite thing probably when he was little was to get $5 from his grandfather and go to the dollar store and spend his $5, which actually got you some things back then, but now not so much. But it was a big treat for him. He definitely loved shopping.
Yeah, he loved shopping.
Even as a young child,
Yeah.
loved to shop. If you would take him shopping, he was just such a happy kid. He loved movies and music. He was just very outgoing. He was a kid
Played
that
soccer
Yeah.
up until he was probably 14.
Yeah,
13, 14.
that's the only sport he really liked, though,
Yeah.
was soccer. Other than that, he wasn't into sports, and he really liked computers and social media, especially when he was 13 or 14 years old. He was silly. He was a silly kid. He loved to be silly and have fun.
Yeah, very witty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had a great sense of humor.
Yeah.
Now, according to Baylee's obituary, he did attend Riverview Secondary School, but there's also an alternative education program listed as well. Now, these programs are designed to meet the needs of students who may not thrive in a traditional classroom. Alternative education programs are often more flexible curriculums, individualized instruction, smaller class sizes, and a focus on different learning styles and interests. We were curious what Baylee's academic experience was like.
He thrived at things that were more interactive as opposed to school. He didn't really like
Yeah,
school.
he didn't like school very much. Yeah, he did okay to pass, but he struggled with school. Yeah, especially from grade 9 up.
I think some of it was that he felt like it was more, he liked attention that was one-on-one as opposed to when he was receiving attention in a group setting. And I felt like he found at school, he didn't necessarily like the structure of school, I would say.
Like many individuals in Generation Z, Baylee's adolescence was significantly shaped by the internet and social media, and he was no exception. He loved social media. Baylee also worked. He delivered newspapers and flyers from the time he was just 14 years old. However, Baylee had some pretty big dreams and goals.
He wanted to be famous.
Yeah.
He
wanted to move to Toronto.
He wanted to move to Toronto and do something big. He didn't know exactly what it would be, but he definitely wanted to be famous.
I mean, he was into social media, and he was pretty well known around Moncton.
And he was quite young then when he started doing
when he
it.
started doing stuff, yeah.
Probably like 13, and he did it up until he was probably 16 or 17 years old.
So unfortunately, Baylee's life hit a speed bump in his young adult years. He began experimenting with drugs. Just weed at first, but quickly things spiraled into experimentation with harder drugs. Here's Amanda and Angie with more on that.
It was not really something that was evident at first. Baylee was the kind of child that really just wanted freedom. He wanted to be able to kind of do what he wanted, make his own decisions, and not understanding himself that I'm maybe too young to do that, because he was young and he was stuck in his ways.
Yeah.
And so he kind of got in with the wrong group of people and started using medication, I think, to self-medicate for other reasons. And it just got out of hand.
And he did enjoy it.
The social part of it.
And yeah, he did enjoy doing drugs. At first, when he started experimenting with drugs, it was his friends from Riverview, where he went to high school. And then I moved over to Moncton, and then he started meeting Moncton children that were going to Moncton High and Harrison Trimble here in Moncton, and got in with a different crowd. His friends changed when I made the move, and the Moncton kids are
just different
from Riverview kids. Yeah, the scene's a little more crazy, but his drug use started really soon, pretty much after he got new friends in Moncton.
With the newfound lifestyle of recreational drug use, which was mostly use of benzos like clonazepam, came a new friend group for Baylee, which was not necessarily a good thing. Normally, as a parent, you'd be excited that your child was making friends and finding their way in life, but that was not the case for Amanda and other members of Baylee's family. This new friend group was a bit rougher around the edges. We asked how Baylee became involved with this new group.
I do think that Amanda moving to Moncton obviously exasperated him getting a new friend group, but Baylee got introduced to those group of friends through his cousin. And so Baylee was very close to his cousins because he didn't grow up here his entire life. He felt a real closeness with his cousins. And the reason that he got involved in those whole group of people was his cousin Taylor and his cousin Courtney. So they were super close. They had been close for a few years, even when we were in Riverview. And then when we moved over to Moncton, they got even closer because they could hang around easier because Baylee didn't have a license. And so being able to get over there became easier. His grandfather would take him, his sister would take him because they were family. And so he originally started hanging around with the group of people that really got him down the path that caused the situation because of his family.
As Baylee came into himself through his teenage and young adult years, he identified as bisexual. We know that members of the LGBTQ+ community can at times be targets for bullying or other forms of othering. So we asked if his identity was ever an issue for him.
Oh, very accepting family.
I'm gay, so
yeah. And I work with children as a profession. No judgment.
it was very accepting.
Very, yeah. Baylee was very popular, even though, Baylee was very popular and well liked by a lot of.
He did get bullied some.
A little bit.
But he was the kind of kid that would just make a joke about it. And then he was so liked by other people that it really never got to him.
In 2015, when the events that we're talking about today took place, Baylee was 18 years old and living with his girlfriend, Marissa Shepard, in a rented townhouse at 96 Sumac Street. Baylee had moved into that residence in October of 2015, and we'll get into more detailed information regarding Marissa Shepard very soon. But first, we need to touch on the fact that Baylee Wylie was involved in sex work. And for more on that, here's Andrea and Angie.
So I know Marissa Shepard was the one that really introduced him to that.
And his cousin Taylor. They were already involved in it.
They were already doing it, and
they got him involved in it, but he did it willingly, so it's not like they forced him.
He definitely did it willingly. He liked the money. Unfortunately, he really liked the money. Yeah, the money would buy him whatever he wanted, plus drugs. And I knew about it, and obviously I wasn't happy about it, but I mean, he was 18.
He was an honest kid, though.
Yeah,
like
he always everything.
He always told us he didn't hide it. But all you could do was talk to him. And at the end of the day, he was going to make his decisions.
Yeah.
He was very strong-willed.
So we just wanted to quickly touch on the sex work aspect of Baylee's life, as it did play out in the media during the trials. Amanda and Angie expressed their concerns to Baylee about this aspect of his life, but expressed an overarching support for him in general. Now let's get into a few of these members of the new friend group that Baylee had found himself in. First, we have Marissa Shepard, and we'll let Amanda and Angie tell you more about Marissa.
In reference to Marissa, I mean, I can tell you the kind of lifestyle that she led was not good. I mean, she got involved in stuff when she was really young.
Yeah.
She was quite troubled. She had a child young with an individual that also was involved in criminal activity. Unfortunately, I think the money was enticing to Marissa, and it was hard for her to also get out of that cycle. But I want to make it clear that I also don't feel Marissa is innocent. She's the individual who is responsible for the entire thing. So
we feel
she is. And so at the end of the day, I mean, although she had a hard life and I feel horrible for the life that she had, I feel like you make your choices in life, and her choices have led her to not so great places. But yeah, she had a child. She was living in an NB housing duplex kind of deal. I guess you call it a townhouse because it was more than a couple of places in one row. And there was a couple of people living there. Courtney and his cousin, so Baylee's cousin Courtney, lived there with her boyfriend Josh till probably about a month before the incident. They had a falling out with Marissa and got kicked out, but Baylee continued to stay there and live there. Tyler was staying there, I think, only a couple of weeks before. And so that's really how Baylee met Tyler, was through Marissa and through Tyler's girlfriend. So Baylee's best friend was a girl named Baylee, who was Tyler's girlfriend. And so that's how Baylee knew Tyler, was really through Baylee Spencer. So he had known Tyler probably longer than that, maybe a year he had known Tyler. And so they were all kind of living in the house. They were using the house as like a home base, but Marissa, when she was working, the boys would watch Cole, which is her son. And she would go work, and then she would come back and they would go out. It was basically a trap house. Like, I don't know what else to call it other than that's really what it was. I mean, it was a bunch of kids in and out all the time, doing drugs, doing things that, a normal person would consider unsavory. But most of that is due to their drawn addictions. And I think that really is, the key to it all, that unfortunately they were kids making adult choices. They were all really young.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
Baylee was looking forward to raising the kid with her.
Yeah, like Cole and Baylee were quite close.
Yeah.
And Baylee really, I think that's actually what drew Baylee to Marissa, was the fact of the opportunity to really help parent Cole. And I mean,
he was really excited about it. We talked about it. He really loved the boy.
So Marissa wasn't exactly the greatest influence in Baylee's life. Regardless, the two were in a relationship, and Baylee was more than willing to help Marissa raise her son Cole from a previous relationship. The two were living in the townhouse, which was provincially subsidized, and had other people living with them. A frequent flyer at the residence was Tyler Noel, who you heard Angie mention. First, we will let Amanda and Angie tell you more about Tyler Noel, and then they'll be talking about Devin Morningstar.
I mean, he had a rough life.
Very rough life.
Like,
his father had been incarcerated for, I want to say, 16 years.
Something like that, from the time Tyler was young.
Yeah.
Like maybe 1 or 2. I don't remember exactly how Tyler was. And he was with his mother until he was, I believe, 13 or 14 years old. And then he was removed and placed in social development housing. He got in trouble a lot, like even as a young kid.
Yeah,
but of course, that stuff's all sealed, right? Because he was a juvenile. But just so that you have some understanding kind of his background, he definitely suffered abuse quite a bit while he lived with his mother. And then when he was removed, he struggled and ended up getting in some trouble. And from there, it was kind of just like a snowball of trouble. Like, but it was all kind of stupid, petty stuff. Like, it wasn't anything that you would think
that would lead to murder.
Yeah. Like, it wasn't anything that you would think he was going to end up doing something like that. Devin, kind of similar story. So, I mean, he lived in Moncton his whole life. His parents decided they got divorced when Devin was, I want to say, 13 years old, and his father, Shane, moved out west. Devin stayed here with his mother, and his mother decided she was going to move to Las Vegas with a boyfriend that she had met, and Devin refused to go. So Devin stayed here, and then when he moved out on his own, he got a girlfriend and decided at I think he was probably 15 or 16. He moved out on his own.
Yeah.
Had his own apartment.
He was actually doing well when the incident happened. He was working at Tim Hortons. He was going to the community college, I thought I heard. But
he was planning on going.
But he was living on his own. And I remember seeing a picture on his social media of his how happy he was that he had a bachelor pad, and he loved, he was taking pictures of his place and the things that he had and stuff. He was very proud.
He lived with 2 roommates and his girlfriend, but his girlfriend and him broke up probably about a week before. So this is kind of the connection between Devin and Baylee. So Baylee did buy weed from Devin. He knew Devin through his best friend, Baylee Spencer, who is also the girlfriend of Tyler Noel. So Baylee Spencer's family is who Devin lived with when he stayed in Moncton, and his mother moved away.
Until he moved out on his own.
Yeah, until he moved out into his own apartment. And so Baylee Spencer really was the connection between how Baylee knew either Tyler and Devin was through her. But
then I want to say about 4 days before Baylee died, Devin and his longtime girlfriend had broken up. And he had contacted Baylee Spencer because he was upset. And Baylee Spencer happened to be at Marissa Shepherd's house at the time. And Devin went and met her at Marissa Shepherd's house.
That's how he met.
That's how he ended up
Marissa
at the house 4 days before.
Because he didn't even know Marissa before that.
Yeah.
Okay, to recap here a little bit, because we know that there are a lot of names to remember and relationships that might be a little confusing. We have our victim, Baylee Wylie, who was dating Marissa Shepherd. Baylee and Marissa were living together in a townhouse at 96 Sumac Street. Baylee Wylie had a female best friend who was also named Baylee. Best friend Baylee is dating a man named Tyler Noel. Best friend Baylee has another male friend who was going through a breakup named Devin Morningstar. Due to Devin's breakup, he contacted best friend Baylee in order to come hang out at the residence at 96 Sumac Street, and that's how Baylee Wylie, Marissa Shepherd, Tyler Noel, and Devin Morningstar would end up hanging out together. In the days leading up to December 17th, 2015, Marissa Shepherd, Tyler Noel, Devin Morningstar, and Baylee Wylie were all staying at the townhouse at 96 Sumac Street. According to court documents and various media, they were engaging in drug use, specifically smoking crack and having sexual relations. There was arguing going on about who had slept with who and some fighting or jealousy around who had been sleeping with Marissa Shepherd. Devin Morningstar and his long-term girlfriend had just broken up, and according to Devin's interview with RCMP, he and Marissa had sex the night he arrived at the residence. That same night, there is also evidence to suggest that Baylee made a video of himself engaged in oral sex with a highly intoxicated Tyler Noel. Devin said he didn't believe him unless he showed him this photographic proof. Allegedly, this proof resulted in an angry reaction from both Tyler Noel and Devin Morningstar. Due to the drug use that was going on, Devin seemed to have a difficult time recalling the timeline of events and how things played out. But he does recall smoking crack in the basement with everyone and at some point being invited upstairs by Marissa Shepherd to shower with her. He stated he was proud of himself for winning Marissa's attention over Tyler Noel. He recalls Tyler being steaming mad and trying so hard to be a big gangster. Things escalate even further when Baylee suggested that he had had sexual contact with both Tyler Noel and Devin Morningstar. Devin denied having sex with Baylee, suggesting that Baylee was only saying this in order to, quote, win over Marissa. Baylee then was said to get upset, wanting Tyler Noel and Devin Morningstar to leave, and he threatened to call police. This would have been an issue for several reasons, the first being that both Tyler and Devin were dealing drugs, and there was also a reference to an alleged gun being hidden underneath a couch. According to court documents, Tyler Noel had brought significant quantities of hard drugs to the townhouse, as well as a .22 caliber rifle that was not loaded, and there was also no ammunition present at the residence. It was then that a plan was hatched. They were going to frame Baylee for drug possession. In the agreed-upon statement of facts, a fight then broke out within the townhouse. The exact way things played out will likely never be known, due to the level of intoxication all involved parties were experiencing, and the fact that those involved would rather not rat on each other than take accountability for what they did that night. This is the version of events that Marissa Shepherd provided in her testimony. On December 16, 2015, Baylee Wylie showed her photos on his BlackBerry of Tyler Noel and himself engaged in oral sex, which she deleted for fear that Tyler Noel might get violent if he saw them. Marissa testified that Baylee subsequently got sassy, reminding Devin Morningstar they had previously engaged in sex and repeatedly teasing Tyler Noel with their sexual interaction the night before. According to Marissa, these suggestions infuriated both Tyler and Devin and triggered a furious attack, mostly with fists on Baylee Wylie. Marissa testified the assault, which took place in her bedroom, finally ceased when Baylee Wylie began bleeding from a cut to the forehead caused by a glass bong she had thrown from a distance in frustration. According to Marissa, she left the premises that night on 2 occasions to engage in sex work with paying customers. The first time she left was after Baylee had sustained the head wound from the bong being thrown at him. Marissa states that upon her initial return to the townhome, everyone was getting along. But when she came back from her second call, things had severely escalated. Devin Morningstar alleges that he and Tyler Noel restrained Baylee to a chair and covered his face and body in plastic wrap. He was subsequently beaten and tortured. As Tyler Noel said, quote, "This is what happens to rats." At some point, a decision was made, allegedly by Tyler Noel, that Baylee couldn't leave the house.
The beating continued, and according to Devin, Marissa and Tyler began stabbing Baylee, and Baylee begs them to stop. Devin recalls being surprised that Baylee was still alive at this point. Now, perhaps unsurprisingly, Devin minimized his involvement and said that he only stabbed Baylee 3 times to prove his loyalty. At some point, Baylee was left alone in the basement after being beaten and stabbed repeatedly, but he was later found crawling up to the main floor to try and escape. Devin recalls that Baylee managed to get his hands on the handle of the back door, but Tyler Noel grabbed his rifle and began hitting him with it. Baylee then collapsed on a couch where he was stabbed repeatedly by an apparently frenzied Mr. Noel. Baylee then died shortly before 4 a.m. on December 17, 2015. Once the group decided he was dead, they doused his corpse in bleach in an effort to destroy any forensic evidence and then placed a box spring over Baylee's body. Devin Morningstar then alleges that Marissa and Tyler began setting a fire inside the townhome, declaring that if there was no body, there was no crime. Marissa, Devin, and Tyler then left the residence burning and had a friend pick them up around 4 a.m., and then that friend drove them to Devin Morningstar's home. Once at Devin's residence, Tyler Noel sees Devin Morningstar talking to best friend Baylee. Tyler then gets concerned that Devin is saying too much. Tyler informed Marissa Shepherd that he is seriously considering killing both Devin Morningstar and best friend Baylee to prevent them from talking. According to Marissa, she argued against Tyler's plan because she, quote, did not want anyone else to die. She recalled saying to Tyler, "No, like, we're not killing anyone else, Tyler." After the group hung out at Devin's place for a while, they left and went to a local convenience store where they were all seen together on CCTV footage. We asked Amanda and Angie what they could tell us about that night and how they found out that Baylee had been murdered.
Obviously, the court documents speak for themselves, Graham, and I think that we can kind of let you guys use that to figure out how you want to present it. But I mean, the story is horrible. And when the details I don't even know if the details fully in the trial would give you an understanding of what actually occurred unless you watch Devin's confession. And so his confession is 3.5 hours, I think. The one that was the actual sworn to testimony one. And it gives the details, and the details match every bit of evidence.
So Baylee wasn't living with me. I was driving to work, and I heard that a man's body was found in a house burnt. And I went to work, and I weirdly talked to everybody about it. Anybody I could talk to, I was like, "Did you hear about this?" Da, da, da. And I was on the phone with a client. My supervisor came home, asked me to log off. It was probably just after lunch, and my sister and a boyfriend and a friend of hers were sitting in a room that I was led to, where they were in the center. So I was at work when I found out.
I found out first.
Yeah.
Because his cousin and Courtney called me. Must have been 11 o'clock in the morning, and called me hysterical and said, "Is it true?" And I was like, "Is what true?" And she said, "Did you read about the fire?" And I said, "Yeah, I read about it this morning," but I didn't know Marissa's address. My father was really the only one that would have known where Marissa lived because he dropped Baylee off there all the time.
Yeah, I was never there either.
So we didn't know the actual address where she lived. So that address didn't draw attention to, thinking anything might be connected. We didn't know anything about the address, so we didn't draw the conclusion because of that. So when my cousin Courtney called me and asked me that, I called my father and asked him if he had talked to Courtney or Taylor. And my dad said, "The police called me 10 minutes ago. They asked me if I was home." And I said, "Okay, well, it's got to be true then. It's got to be Baylee that was in the house." And my dad said, "In what house?" So he didn't even know why the police had called him and asked him if he was home. And that's how we found out.
After the fire was put out, the grim discovery of 18-year-old Baylee Wylie's body was made. It was immediately obvious to police that they were looking at a homicide, and on December 19th, the RCMP asked for anyone with information to come forward. The next day, on December 20th, 2015, the first arrest was made. Devin Morningstar was arrested and charged with the first-degree murder of Baylee Wylie. When police announced his arrest, they also made sure to let the public know that they were still searching for 2 more persons of interest: 20-year-old Marissa Shepherd and 18-year-old Tyler Noel. Little did anyone know that a very long manhunt was about to unfold.
Fast forward to nearly a month after Devin Morningstar was arrested, just before 1 p.m. on Saturday, January 9th, 2016, Tyler Noel was located inside a vehicle in Petitcodiac, New Brunswick, and this is about 30 minutes southeast of Moncton. Tyler Noel was charged with first-degree murder and arson in connection with the events that took place at 96 Sumac Street on December 17, 2015. Another adolescent, 18-year-old Zachary Holden, was apprehended in the residence where Tyler Noel was suspected to be hiding out, and he was charged with being an accessory after the fact. Now, the only person left for the police to apprehend was Marissa Shepard, but it was proving difficult to locate her. The public widely believed that Marissa was on the run, but others believed she was dead. Those people included Marissa's father, who told Global News that he had not heard from his daughter since December 12, 2015, 4 days before the incident took place. He also said that his worst fear was that his daughter was dead, stating it was very out of character for her to be out of contact with her friends and loved ones for any period of time. He then made a plea directly to his daughter, quote, "Marissa, you need to give me a call. You need to tell me where I can come and pick you up, and we need to have a talk. I promise you that I will do everything in my power to make sure that you are treated with respect, dignity, and justice." The second person who came forward to the media declaring that he believed Marissa Shepard was dead was her baby daddy, Stephen Nagel, who also did a recorded interview for Global News. In this interview, he states that he doesn't know where Marissa is and that he hasn't heard from her. Quote, "It's very complex and deep and very troublesome for everyone involved, both families. What no one really understands is thanks to social media, it's pretty much terrorized mine and Marissa's families. This is supposed to be Canada, where you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, and Marissa has been portrayed to be a monster when no one even knows if she's a victim or not. No one has seen her. I think Marissa would have reached out to me and asked for help, but I haven't heard from her, and her family hasn't heard from her. Marissa is an intelligent young lady, but she doesn't like being alone, so I fear the worst. It really bothers me about the hate mail that my family and her family have been getting." Well, just 2 weeks after Stephen Nagel gave this interview on March 1st, 2016, Marissa Shepard was located hiding out at a Comfort Inn in Moncton with none other than Stephen Nagel and another woman named Crystal Toole, both of whom were also arrested. Toole faced charges for assisting Marissa Shepard during her period as a fugitive for first-degree murder. Meanwhile, Nagel, who was the father of Marissa's 4-year-old son and also in a relationship with Crystal Toole, was accused of aiding Marissa, facilitating her escape, and violating a court order to maintain distance from Crystal Toole. Unsure why. According to Global News, Stephen Nagel expressed disbelief in court upon hearing the charges against him. Quote, "This is ridiculous. I thought she was dead." He also mentioned that Marissa Shepard had every intention to surrender herself the very evening she was arrested. So on March 1st, 2016, Marissa Shepard was located, arrested, and charged with first-degree murder as well as arson. It took nearly 3 months, but all the suspects in connection with the first-degree murder of Baylee Wylie were finally in custody, and it was time for them to stand trial.
There were many court proceedings in this case, so we'll do our best to simplify them. First up was Devin Morningstar's trial. This trial took 3 weeks, and the jury was made up of 7 women and 5 men. Prosecutor Stephen Holt informed the court that Morningstar engaged in Wylie's forcible confinement and stabbed him 3 times with a knife while pinning him down. While the defense didn't present any evidence during the trial, lawyer Bob Rideout told the jury that Morningstar was simply, quote, "a fall guy in a larger plan made by his co-accused." Both the Crown and the defense acknowledged that Morningstar himself had sustained cuts, with his blood placing him at the scene. Morningstar opted to not take the stand in his own defense, but the long 2 interviews that he gave to police shortly after his arrest were admitted as evidence. In those interviews, he confessed to stabbing Wylie 3 times in the neck and restraining him. After 2 days of jury deliberation, Devin Morningstar was found guilty of first-degree murder as well as arson. The verdict's aftermath was pretty emotional. The Wylie and Morningstar families, as well as 5 jurors, began breaking out in tears. The family of Baylee Wylie hailed the verdict as a relief while releasing 18 balloons into the sky in honor of Baylee's 18 years of life. Morningstar's mother expressed her expectation that she thought her son would be found guilty of the lesser charge of manslaughter and mentioned plans for an appeal. She also extended her condolences to the Wylie family, stating, quote, "Devin thought he was participating in an assault, which is wrong, but he didn't realize he was participating in a murder." It was a horrific, horrific crime that took place, and I can't imagine what it was like for his mom to sit in the courtroom and hear the details of that. My heart does and has since the beginning gone out to their family. Now, shortly after the verdict, it was time for Devin to be sentenced. In reading the sentencing document, we think the beginning of it is incredibly important to share, so we are going to read that in its totality.
The judge begins by saying, "The court struggles to find words to capture the utter depravity of what occurred in that triplex living unit the evening and early morning hours of December 16th and 17th, 2015. The court, which by no means is naive to the sickness in the world, also struggles to understand, to comprehend how this could occur. How it is that anyone could treat another human being as Baylee Wylie was treated, for he was quite simply tortured to death and then to set fire, risking the lives of others. Is it because our society seems to be drowning in a sea of individual rights without responsibility and accountability? Or is it because our society seems to be overrun by drug abuse, sadly, the walking dead of society? Or is it because we live in a society that glorifies criminality, especially violence, in entertainment? A society in which some citizens, from various walks of life, emulate foolish convict and prison codes of so-called honor, such as those associated with the words rat and disrespected? Or is it because a growing number of people are living their lives in enclaves of virtual reality with little of any respect for authority, so out of touch, so immature? For I have seen marks of all of that in society at large, in the evidence of what happened that night, and in Mr. Morningstar's beliefs and attitudes as revealed in his police interviews. Or in utter denial. Would some in society think that these are but the mutterings of a perhaps angry and frustrated judge? For I cannot fathom how this could have happened, how one 18-year-old could participate in the killing of another 18-year-old in the circumstances that existed that evening, let alone in the manner it occurred. Baylee Wylie simply was no threat to anyone that night. He was a victim, a target, for reasons I find incomprehensible. A judge who has no words to bring even a small measure of solace to the victim's family, or given the life sentence I am required to impose on someone so young. No words for the accused family, so that they may understand. 2 families destroyed, one literally forever. For I have watched both families in the public gallery during the trial, and I have read and heard Baylee Wylie's family's words as expressed by Baylee's mother and aunt, trying to grasp the horror, trying to stop the pain, trying to convey the loss they so deeply feel. I do not know what to say except, on behalf of the good people of this province, I am so truly sorry.
The sentencing document goes on to speak to Devin Morningstar's life before the incident. It reads as follows. Until Devin reached approximately 14 years of age, he had led a typical life as a boy in the Moncton area, benefiting from a loving and supportive family consisting of his parents, 3 siblings, and a grandmother, who all continued to support him. He described his upbringing as, quote, ideal to his parole officer. However, the separation and subsequent divorce of his parents when he was around 14 years old had a significant impact on him. This period saw him struggling with self-harm and suicidal thoughts, leading to a diagnosis of depression and a referral to a psychiatrist. His mother explained that the divorce greatly affected him, causing him to become angry and withdraw from his friends and associate with peers whom his parents disapproved of. He did not complete his education beyond grade 9 and attempted to live independently, albeit unsuccessfully, with brief periods of residing with one parent or the other. And during that period, he began experimenting with soft drugs, progressing to speed and acid and ecstasy by the age of 15. Around this time, he made a brief attempt at rehab. By 2015, his drug use actually escalated to include cocaine, and later that year, he started frequently using hydromorphone. This led to his first arrest in 2015. When he was 16, he briefly lived with his mother in Alberta, and during this time, psychiatrists diagnosed him with, quote, anxiety, and there was a tentative diagnosis of borderline schizophrenia, which apparently had run in his family. His employment record was sparse. In 2015, he worked at a coffee shop for 10 months. We believe this was at Tim Hortons, but he was eventually dismissed after he started showing up for work, loaded and experiencing withdrawals on 3 separate occasions during his shift.
Devin Morningstar faced sentencing for first-degree murder and arson. The murder charge carried an automatic life sentence of 25 years without parole eligibility. However, the judge considered mitigating and aggravating factors for the arson conviction. Mitigating factors included Morningstar's youth, lack of prior convictions, remorse, and cooperation with authorities. The aggravating factors included the intentional setting of fires to conceal the homicide, endangering other lives in the triplex unit that day, and the deliberate nature of the fires. Devin's drug use was deemed insufficient to excuse his actions. The judge asked Devin to stand to receive his sentence before saying, quote, "I heard you in your statements to the police deny that you are a monster. Yes, Devin Morningstar, I agree. You are not a monster. But you participated in monstrous acts, for which you will be held accountable by suffering the highest penalty of our law. On your conviction for the first-degree murder of Baylee Wylie, the court sentences you to imprisonment for life without eligibility for parole until you have served 25 years of your sentence. On your conviction for arson, in disregard for the lives of others, the court sentences you to imprisonment for 3 years to run concurrently."
Next up in court was Tyler Noel, and surprisingly to some, in a deal with the Crown, Tyler Noel pleaded guilty to second-degree murder for his part in Baylee Wylie's homicide. But before they could even get to the court sentencing, Tyler Noel made an attempt to escape from the St. John Regional Correctional Center while awaiting his court date. He didn't get very far, though, and he was quickly apprehended after a short foot chase. Tyler Noel appeared in court in July of 2017 for sentencing before Judge Stephen McNally. The judge went through the statement of facts and said, quote, "It was eventually decided that Mr. Wylie needed to die." The judge pointed out that Baylee had almost escaped through the back door after enduring horrific violence at the hands of the people who were supposed to be his friends. The judge also highlighted that the victim was found with nearly 200 wounds all over his body. However, the judge also took into account Noel's upbringing and life circumstances. Tyler Noel recounted that he largely provided for himself during his youth, enduring a challenging environment with a drug-addicted mother who mistreated him and a father who spent most of his life in prison. According to the judge, although a group home introduced some semblance of structure into his life, Noel struggled with adhering to its regulations. Additionally, the judge noted that Tyler had been diagnosed with oppositional defiance disorder and attention deficit disorder. Tyler had been prescribed medication until the age of 14, when he could no longer afford it. He did disclose to the court that he eventually realized his social life consisted solely of, quote, drug friends who were no longer in his life. Eventually, the sentencing decision was read out, and Tyler Noel was sentenced to life with no eligibility for parole for 16 years. Tyler then read a prepared statement to Baylee Wylie's family, stating that he knew the murder was, quote, stupid and wrong, before adding, quote, "I hope you guys can sincerely forgive me."
Moving on to Marissa Shepard. Before she even got to court to face a jury for her first-degree murder trial, Marissa found herself in more hot water while in custody awaiting trial. In the summer of 2016, 4 officers responded to Marissa's jail cell, where she was reportedly banging her head against the wall and biting her own arm. Upon successfully restraining Marissa, she proceeded to spit in one of the officers' faces, striking the guard in the eye. For this, she was charged with assault, and Marissa pled guilty, receiving a 4-month sentence. Now, Marissa Shepard wouldn't actually go to trial until late April, early May of 2018. She pleaded not guilty to the charges of first-degree murder and arson, and she was the only witness that was called to the stand in her defense. She stated that she was not present during Baylee's murder, as she was out on 2 escort calls while the violence was taking place. As part of Crown's evidence against Marissa, Devin Morningstar's interviews with police were played at her trial. This audio included the following quotes. Devin says, "My blood's all over the murder scene." The undercover officer he's talking to agrees that that looks bad. Morningstar says, 20 fucking years, man. The officer wants to clarify how he ended up in this situation. Morningstar says, "I was just fucked up, man." And then he's heard sighing after that. Devin is also heard calling Marissa Shepard a fucking head case. And when he finally names his accomplices to the undercover officer and is asked if there's any chance they could be on the run together, Devin says that Tyler Noel threatened to kill Marissa Shepard if she didn't go with him. When it was the jury's time to deliberate, things didn't take long, only 3 hours in fact, before they returned with their verdict. Marissa Shepard was guilty of first-degree murder, as well as arson, without regard for human life, in connection with the death of Baylee Wylie.
So with Devin and Marissa being found guilty of first-degree murder and Tyler getting second-degree, we imagine everyone involved was satisfied with this outcome. But unfortunately, their peace of mind wouldn't last long, because just 1 year after Marissa was found guilty of first-degree murder, there was talk that she was gearing up for an appeal. This appeal was based on Devin Morningstar's audio-taped interviews being introduced as evidence in Marissa's trial. An attorney representing Marissa Shepard informed a panel of 3 judges that Devin Morningstar's statements and evidence should not be admitted, emphasizing that they were self-serving and contained inconsistencies as well as hearsay. The decision on whether or not Marissa's first-degree murder conviction would be overturned happened in October of 2019. First, of course, they went through the context of the case. When the crimes described in the indictment occurred, Miss Shepard was leasing the middle unit of a triplex. Marissa had a young son who was at the residence, but Marissa's mother came and picked him up on December 16th, 2015, before the assault on Baylee Wylie began. Mr. Noel, who was involved in drug trafficking, brought a significant amount of hard drugs and a .22 caliber rifle to the home. Miss Shepard, of course, had known Mr. Noel for a few years, but she just met Mr. Morningstar days before Baylee was murdered. While at the unit, they consumed large amounts of drugs, and Miss Shepard testified about the events leading to Mr. Wylie's death, mentioning that Wylie's teasing had led to a violent attack by Mr. Noel and Mr. Morningstar. She claims that she left twice for paid sex, returning to find Baylee Wylie badly injured. Wylie was assaulted in various parts of the house and stabbed over 100 times and died in the living room before the unit was set on fire.
During the preliminary examination, Marissa Shepard chose not to testify. However, she did testify before the jury. During her direct examination, she admitted being present during some of the assaults on Baylee Wylie and when he was killed, but explained that she was too afraid to intervene. She denied having any motive to harm Baylee, whom she had known since childhood and cared for deeply. She refuted all allegations made by Devin Morningstar in his formal statements, which accused her of participating in the offenses. At Marissa's trial, Devin Morningstar chose not to speak, leading to a pretrial hearing to decide if his statements could be used as evidence. Those are those police statements. The judge looked closely at how reliable the statements were, and they found that both the way the statements were obtained and their actual truthfulness were not very reliable. Even though there was evidence supporting the statements, the judge was careful and didn't fully trust them because Devin Morningstar was not cross-examined. The voir dire evidence regarding the reliability of Devin Morningstar's statements can be divided into 2 main parts. First, there's evidence indicating that Marissa Shepard was present at the scene of the crime. This includes witness testimony, surveillance footage, and rental records linking her to the location where the crimes took place. Second, there's evidence of Marissa Shepard's behavior after the events, which suggests her involvement. An innocent person witnessing a crime and fire would likely report it to the authorities, but Marissa Shepard did not. Instead, she was seen with the perpetrators later on that day and attempted to alter her appearance when confronted by the police. Based on this evidence, the judge concluded that Devin Morningstar's statements were likely truthful. During the trial, the judge also cautioned the jury to be careful in relying solely on Devin Morningstar's words and to seek corroborating evidence from other sources. But in Marissa's case, the judge made legal mistakes regarding the presentation of Devin's formal statements to the jury. Firstly, he allowed the jury to listen to recordings of the statements without removing certain comments by Devin Morningstar that were inappropriate and could unfairly influence the jury. These included that the day before the murder, Marissa Shepard used a broomstick to intimidate and violently strike best friend Baylee across the face because she was suspected of trying to steal her phone. 2, speculation that Marissa Shepard's call to her mother to take away her son from the residence was made because she and Tyler Noel had previously settled on a secret plan to assault Baylee Wylie and then set the premises on fire. 3, his opinion that Marissa Shepard liked bad boys and that she is always dating people like that. 4, the related observation that all of her ex-boyfriends are in jail right now. 5, the suggestion that her father was a member of the Hells Angels. And 6, in his opinion, that Marissa Shepard would probably lie about her involvement. Defense counsel didn't object to the jury hearing these comments, but this doesn't mean it was a strategic decision. Unfortunately, all of this just wasn't acceptable. A lot of it is hearsay. Another main issue revolves around a statement made by Marissa Shepard during her testimony in her defense. She mentioned that after Baylee's murder, Tyler Noel informed her of his contemplation to kill Devin Morningstar and best friend Baylee when they were at Devin's house after Baylee Wylie's murder. Marissa Shepard informed the jury that she tried to dissuade Tyler by saying, "We're not killing anybody else, Tyler." Following Marissa Shepard's extensive testimony, the Crown did not question her about this statement and cross-examined Marissa for less than 5 minutes. However, during her closing argument, the Crown prosecutor referenced Shepard's words as an admission of guilt. Quote, in Marissa's own words, she included herself in the killing of Baylee Wylie by saying, "We're not killing anybody else." The Court of Appeal deems this statement by the Crown as unfair and improper.
The Court of Appeal decision goes on to state, quote, "It's obvious that Miss Shepard meant you're not killing anybody else, Tyler." The decision states that Crown Counsel was aware of this, but unfairly and improperly used Miss Shepard's poor choice of words to argue that she essentially confessed to murder. The Court of Appeal concluded that the Crown should have allowed Shepard to explain herself during cross-examination, and since the Crown failed to do so and neither the defense attorney nor the judge objected, Shepard was denied a fair trial. So on October 24, 2019, Marissa Shepard won her appeal, and her convictions were overturned and a new trial was ordered. But before they could get to the new trial, which was slated for August of 2021, Marissa Shepard's lawyer made a shocking announcement. Marissa Shepard pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of manslaughter and arson, and she would only be appearing in court for sentencing. She'd no longer have to face a jury trial. Here's Angie and Amanda on how Marissa ended up with the deal that she got.
Okay, so in terms of Marissa ending up getting a deal, and after she had won the appeal, was because, unfortunately, in Devin's statement, he had stated he hadn't touched the gun. And we had a few things retested in preparation for Marissa's second trial. And of those items to have retested were items that had mixed DNA, where they could then separate male and female DNA and tell us, or two male types, to be able to actually tell us whose mixed DNA it was. Because originally in Devin's first trial and in Tyler's pretrial documents, you'll see information about them talking about DNA of mixed male type, but they can't specify who it is. That's because they couldn't quite separate them then. Once DNA had advanced a little bit, we had sent some items back out to be tested, one of them being the gun. And when the gun was tested, Devin's DNA was found on the gun.
Well, then they couldn't use the statement to do a retrial.
They weren't going to be able to use Devin's statement in the retrial because they knew that the judge wouldn't approve it with that inaccuracy. And so it was going to hurt our ability to be able to even say what had happened.
So if anyone is confused, Devin initially stated in his police interviews that he had never touched the firearm that was present at the murder scene. However, his DNA was found on the gun. So this called the rest of his testimony into question. If he's lying about never touching the gun, what else is Devin Morningstar being dishonest about? That's kind of the idea. Therefore, all of Devin's interviews with the police were inadmissible in the new trial, and without Devin's testimony, the case against Marissa Shepard for first-degree murder was significantly weakened.
At her new sentencing hearing, after the judge went through the facts of the case, he moved on to the following information about Marissa Shepard. Since her imprisonment 5.5 years ago, she has kept a small group of friends and looks forward to starting anew, hoping to build new friendships and distance herself from individuals who could have a negative impact on her life. She spent time in a federal facility from June 2018 to November 2019 and is currently awaiting sentencing at the New Brunswick Women's Correctional Center. If released, she plans to possibly relocate to Toronto with her sister to start over. Physically, she's in good health, but she relies on antipsychotic and antidepressant medication, as well as methadone for her mental and emotional well-being. She has disclosed struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, and depression, and is actively engaged in therapy sessions while incarcerated with plans to continue seeking support upon her release. Introduced to illicit substances at 12 years old, she began using methamphetamine, MDMA, and marijuana by age 13. She ceased drug use during her pregnancy and the first year of her child's life, but resumed after that until her imprisonment. She claims to have remained drug-free since then. She acknowledges involvement with the provincial justice system as a youth and has no prior adult offenses. Expressing deep remorse for her involvement in Baylee Wylie's death, she acknowledges that better decisions could have prevented Noelle and Morningstar from engaging in drug use at her residence. Her background sheds light on the poor choices she made leading up to the offenses on December 17, 2015. The report highlights her efforts to address her drug addiction and engage in self-improvement programs. She intends to continue working on self-improvement in the future. The judge then asked Marissa Shepard to stand. For manslaughter, I impose a 12-year jail term, as recommended by both parties, with additional orders. She must provide a bodily fluid sample, no direct or indirect contact with the Wylie family, a lifelong ban on possessing firearms and ammunition. For arson, a concurrent 3-year sentence, and she gets credit for time served before sentencing. She has been in custody since March 1st, 2016, totaling 5 years and 173 days. The 12-year sentence will credit 1.5 days for each day served. This meant that Marissa Shepard would only have to spend approximately 1,383 more days in jail, which was roughly 3 years and 253 days. Before we move on to where things sit today in this horrific case, we thought we should mention that while Marissa Shepard was behind bars, she had a profile on inmatesconnect.com, which is a matchmaking website for convicts. Her profile states the following: name, Marissa Shepard, Institute, Joliet Institution for Women. Date of birth, June 27, 1995, convicted of murder. Expected release date, life, 25 years. Interested in corresponding with both men and women. Hi, my name is Marissa June, and I'm from New Brunswick. I'm currently on appeal serving time on a life sentence, taken advantage of by our poor justice system, but they haven't defeated me yet. I do not talk of my crime as I am still going through court appearances. I am a strong, independent woman with wisdom way beyond my years. I'm 5'4", well fit, slim, brown eyes, and naturally wavy brown hair. I am a girly girl who adores makeup and taking care of herself. I maintain a positive attitude, enjoy a great laugh. I like to do crafty things as well as drawing. I am educating myself while I am here and take advantage of my time to keep myself busy. I am humble and easy to get along with. I am pro-ethnicity and studying different religions. My astrological sign is Cancer, and believe it serves me well describing my character. I am looking for nothing more than an intelligent conversation and meeting new friends. Hope to hear from you. Take care.
So if you've been following this case like many Canadians have, you know that Marissa Shepard is now out of prison. She reached her statutory release date in early March of this year, which is, of course, 2024. According to documents from the Parole Board of Canada, several assessments were conducted to evaluate her risk of reoffending. Shepard's risk factors were rated as high with a score of 17 on the Criminal Risk Index. Research shows that 16% of female federal offenders in this category, who score between 14 and 18, committed a crime within 3 years of being released. A psychological evaluation conducted in November of 2022 concluded that her risk of reoffending is, quote, moderate with a low to moderate risk of violent reoffending while on parole. The psychologist recommended that Shepard continue with therapy, psychiatric services, and build a supportive social network, as well as pursuing her education, engaging with community elders, and participating in Narcotics Anonymous or other addictions-type counseling. During her time in prison, Shepard participated in a canine program, and her plans upon release include following the recommended interventions, maintaining employment, and advancing her education in the canine field. She has identified family members and her fiancé as sources of support in her community. Additional stringent conditions include no contact with the victim's family, abstaining from drugs and alcohol, and adhering to a treatment plan supervised by her parole officer for substance abuse and mental health. Shepard must also reside in a community-based residential or psychiatric facility approved by the Correctional Service of Canada and return there each night. While 2 facilities expressed willingness to accept her, local law enforcement in those areas did not support the decision. Tyler Noel and Devin Morningstar remain in prison, serving their sentences for the murder of Baylee Wylie. We wanted to hear directly from Baylee's family members with what their experience has been going through the Canadian justice system. Many of us may never experience that, so it's very important for us to hear from the family members of a homicide victim, and here's what they had to say.
Oh gosh, the things that we've learned about the justice system. I could just tell you. Okay. So I actually have a little bit of a background in law, and my whole life wanted to be a lawyer. When I was probably like 22 or 23 years old, I decided, no, that's not what I'm going to do. I went about a career in call centers and was a leadership development manager for many years. So kind of lost touch with the justice system and the understanding of it and things like that. But it's never really apparent what the justice system is until you deal with it. And so gosh, I like to tell people that the justice system is not what you see on TV. It's not what you see on Dateline. Sorry. I was a firm believer in the justice system until we dealt with this. And I knew about how sentences were done in Canada and how people get, what they get for a sentence and how our system is built on rehabilitation and all of those things. But until you actually deal with it personally, you never really understand what it's like. In a world where somebody, I want to say this so that you can use it, so just give me a second. In a world where somebody can do something like what Marissa Shepard did and only serve 8.5 years in prison, doesn't make sense to me. Because how fair is that to Baylee?
Or to me.
It's just not a fair system.
What was taken from me?
And so we know Tyler is probably, he's probably not going to get out on his first attempt at parole,
No.
He's probably going to be out in a few years too. And at the end of the day, I just don't think that that's a fair system. There's nothing about like the parole write-up that you will read from Marissa, I'm sure that you've maybe even seen already because she's been released, explains that they know she's going to reoffend. They don't think she should be let out, but they don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Because she served her time.
Right.
And so they have to let her out.
And there's been no real change in her. Still manipulative and all of the things she was before when she went in. No change, but they have to let her out.
I think one way to explain it is like that whole push and pull. Like it's like you get a little bit of good or you get better, you get to heal a little bit. And then all of a sudden it's like that Band-Aid's ripped off again every single time. And I don't think our justice system's not built for the victim.
No.
It certainly isn't, right? If a person goes up for parole 16 times, then you've got to go to that parole hearing 16 times. Just in the case of Marissa, she changed her parole hearing 3 or 4 times. Yeah. Every single time I had to submit a victim impact statement. And they were 2 or 3 months apart. And then that's going through the turmoil of writing it and submitting it and then finding out, oh, well, she's not even going to do it this time. Okay, well, do it again next time. And it just becomes a revolving door, I think, of re-victimizing the victims rather than focusing on, anything that matters in terms of what we've experienced or what's happened to us. It's about what's good for Marissa, or the perpetrator in any circumstance for any family. And I'm sure that many families that have experienced this in Canada probably understand it full-heartedly, that our system is not built to help you. If you are a victim of crime, our system is built to re-victimize you over and over again. Reform's where you start.
Yeah.
Really maybe looking at our justice system and looking at how we sentence people. And rather than trying to pull together 4 or 5 cases that have nothing to do with the same thing that happened to an individual as an example, and say, oh, well, this person got 10 years, this person got 8 years.
So we'll give you 16.
It just doesn't make any sense. Taking crimes that don't even come close to what occurred to my nephew and saying that those crimes are what we're using in order to build the sentence for this individual doesn't make any sense to me. They weren't even close to what my nephew experienced. He experienced 6.5 hours of being tortured. You can't compare that to a murder. And I'm not trying to dishearten anything that's ever happened to an individual who's had a family member murdered by any means, because all of it is extremely wrong. But to say that an individual whom got shot once at a party is the same as what they did to my nephew doesn't make sense to me.
So to give a little bit more context, we wanted more information from Angie and Amanda regarding Marissa's time behind bars. The parole board document made her out to sound a little bit like a model inmate, but was this the reality?
No, not really. Like in the parole decree, which I think is public information, I'm sure you can see it, Graham, but it basically explains that, for probably, she was in for 8.5 years. So for 6.5 of it, she was nothing but a problem. She participated in really no programs other than getting her education. But in the last 1.5, 2 years of her sentence, knowing that it was approaching her getting out, she did start to participate in some programs, and started to work with canine dogs, like the training them. And she started to begin to do that about 2 years before she got out. But notice the parole board's feeling was that she had not made enough improvement to be released. But at this point, she served her time.
After our research into this case, we were left with some questions regarding Marissa's time on the run. There was nothing about her recollection of the version of events in the court documents, so we asked Amanda and Angie what Marissa said happened while she was evading capture.
She said she wasn't there. She claimed she was out with a John.
And that she was on a call. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that when she got back, that it already had gone too far and that she couldn't stop it.
And then she claimed that she was taken and kidnapped and kept in captivity for the time that she was missing.
And then when she overheard that she was being sold or given
to sex trafficking, she escaped and got a drive back to Moncton, but yet never found anybody who drove her, or nothing. Not a single person could testify to her story.
Another interesting point we'd like to touch on is that Devin Morningstar's mother believes her son has been wrongfully convicted. She has created a Facebook group titled The Wrongful Conviction of Devin Morningstar. It has 688 members as of April 2024, and the About page of the group states, Devin Shane Morningstar, 19, was wrongfully convicted of first-degree murder in the death of Baylee Wylie in December 2015, on November 11, 2016. Our position: we don't claim Devin is completely innocent. Devin does not claim he's completely innocent. He was there, and he minimally participated as he was in fear of his own life. In the beginning, he was told it was an assault to teach him a lesson. He was not told, or did he think it was going to be a murder? Yes, an assault is wrong as well, but it is a far cry from first-degree murder. Devin had no reason to want Baylee dead. He had very little to do with him. When Devin realized it was a murder taking place, he no longer participated. Devin also had an altered state of mind as they had given him crack for the first time. The motive for the murder came from one of the co-accused. It's not my place to say what that person's motive was, but I will say that person was threatened and manipulated. That person then got the other two involved. One to actually do it, and one to take the fall. Devon was set up to take the fall. We expected the verdict to come back as manslaughter, as the judge instructed the jury to consider his good character, his state of mind, drugs, and his age. Everyone, including the judge, you could see it on his face, was shocked when the verdict came back as guilty of first-degree murder. The jury, a jury of 7 women and 5 men, were accepted by both the defense and the prosecution. On day 2, the defense made a motion to have one woman removed and replaced by an alternate. The sheriff lied about a connection the woman had to one of the co-accused's mother. There was no such connection, but the judge granted the prosecution's motion and she was excused. The delivery of the verdict. After the delivery of the verdict, 5 jury members broke down in tears. Not just it was a hard emotional case tears. The foreman was crying louder and harder than Devon's own mother. There were cries that came from somewhere deeper than just empathy. It was sobs of injustice. The witnesses. The Crown introduced several witnesses. 2 of them deliberately lied on the stand. One witness has come forward to the defense alleging the Crown prosecutor, Mark Savoy, told him to lie. The Crown prosecution did not prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. They had very large stakes riding on this trial and had to win it by any means. A huge injustice has taken place. Devon will have to serve 25 years of his life without chance of parole for a crime he was minimally involved in and had no motive or intent to commit. This group is for people that truly believe he was wrongfully convicted and support him. We will be filing for an appeal and need all the support we can get. Thank you from Devon's family and close friends. Here's what Amanda and Angie have to say about the notion that Devon Morningstar has been wrongfully convicted.
Well, and honestly, if there was any evidence that we felt that that was truthful, we'd be open to it. It's not. He was present and he participated. His clothing had Baylee's DNA on it, and that he was still wearing 3 days later, Graham.
When he was arrested, he gave the first interview.
His DNA was on the inside of the gloves used to clean. Absolutely, he participated. He was involved.
Yeah, in the video, he shows the blood on his sneaker when he's in the video.
Yeah, he wasn't wrongfully convicted.
The events that transpired at 96 Sumac Street in the early morning hours of December 17th, 2015 shook the entire city of Moncton, New Brunswick, and eventually the entire nation when the story of the perpetrators on the run gained traction. The idea that 3 young people could inflict such hateful violence on an 18-year-old boy was unfathomable. Here's what Angie and Amanda had to say when we asked about the impact that losing Baylee has had on them, as well as their community.
I can. Anybody who's ever lost a loved one, obviously you miss a loved one that's gone, but it's so hard to explain the impact that it has on you when you experience the trauma that we went through.
It's coming on 9 years in December, and I still have many days where
holidays are hard.
Mother's Day for me, it would be Mother's Day for me, his birthday, oddly, his death day. That's a pretty hard day. Yeah, Mom's Day is probably the worst. Yeah, I don't even go on Facebook. I can't. But because of this happening to Baylee, it has changed my career in life, and now I work with children. Because Baylee was my only child, I definitely took a negative and turned it into a positive. But I definitely have a lot of still really hard days.
They tell you that time heals, but I don't think it's that time heals. I think you just learn how to live with it.
Yeah. The city, I got things made for me. Oh man, the city was definitely affected. And they're really affected now that she's been released. Because now I'm getting, oh my gosh, I can't believe she's been released. Yeah. Yeah, no, the city was very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very supportive.
Yeah, we got a lot of support, I think, from the community. I think, but I think his friend group, like his age group, was very affected by it.
Oh, very.
Kids that were, between the age of 20 and 16 years old, I think it just changed their outlook on things. Like, who do you trust? How do you trust your friends? I think it definitely caused a lot of questioning when it came to kids his age, even people that didn't know him that maybe just heard a story.
Yeah.
As always, we wanted to know if there was anything that our audience can do to help. And here's what they had to say.
Well, part of what they can do is obviously, every person has a right to vote. And so paying attention to, those individuals who are talking about justice reform,
Yes.
don't just hear the story and feel for it, but then do nothing, right? So my thing is, if you think it can't happen to your family, I promise you it can.
It can happen to anybody.
We were such a normal family.
Normal. Yeah. My father was in the military. Baylee came from a very good home, very good family dynamic.
And so it can happen to anyone at any time. And so just think about if it was your loved one and, that's the kind of sentence somebody was telling you that what happened to them, it was worth. It just, think about it when you're voting. Think about it when you're making a decision about who you pick to be even your municipal person, because everything leads up to that federal government, right? And without reform, there'll be no change. And personally, I think that, like, obviously, I'm going to try to be involved in the whole idea of reform and looking at how we sentence individuals in Canada, because I think it's ridiculous that we look at 3 or 4 examples of something and say this is what this person deserves based on this. We used to listen to what victims felt the person should get.
Yeah.
That's not even allowed anymore in Canada. You can't even write as a family member what you feel the sentence for somebody should be.
You can't even write anything about your feelings at all.
It has to all be completely impersonal, which doesn't make any sense to me. In the US, when you watch, thousands of shows, I'm sure you've seen a victim impact statement or 2, right? You're allowed to direct it immediately at that person. You're allowed to tell them what they did to you and your family.
What you think of them.
In Canada, it is boiled down to being able to tell them the impact it's had on your finances or your career or things like that. That doesn't even make sense to me. It should be about the real impact it has on yourself and your family. And how can you do that without being able to actually, voice how you feel about something or voice, the actual turmoil that you go through? I mean, you can look at my victim impact statement. I'll send it to you if you want, Graham. And I did as good a job as I could within the parameters that they give you on a piece of paper. But it just is not fitting to what you should be able to do.
That's all we have for this episode of True North True Crime. We'd like to thank Amanda and Angie for bringing Baylee's story to our attention and for their honesty and willingness to sit down with us to discuss his case. We know it's not easy for victims' family members to relive their trauma, but we do believe that sharing Baylee's story and others like his can help move toward reform in our justice system. Thanks for joining us on this episode. We'll see you soon with a brand new one. But if you can't wait for more True North True Crime, make sure to check out TNTC Plus on Apple Podcasts or on Patreon. There's tons of bonus content waiting for you there. Until next time, stay safe, everyone.
Stay safe.